working?
But everyone can hear me in this room?
No. So why don't you text them on Zoom?
To do what?
I can hear you.
You can hear them.
I can hear you. This is Rami.
Can we start? Okay. Good afternoon. My name is Khalid Al Tawil. I am the Senior Programs Coordinator for the Food Systems Hub. I will be your moderator for this session, CFS side event from ambition to action, building on the CFS in the UNFSS+4 outcomes for good food system transformation. As you know, the event is co-organized by the Food Systems Hub with the two co-hosts, Ethiopia and Italy, with the Food and Agriculture Organization, Brazil, the major group for children and youth, and the Scaling Up Nutrition. In the event of today, we'll be sharing the outcomes of the Food System Summit. We will be also reflecting on what could be the next steps in implementing the Secretary General call to action, as well as how to use the CFS policies and tools in order to support food system transformation at the country level. For today, we have a very rich panel. We have two speakers representing the two co-hosts, Ethiopia and Italy. Then we will hear a presentation from the director of the Food Systems Hub. And then we will go into a panel discussion where we'll hear from Maximum Terrero, the chief economist of FAO. And we'll have two interventions from national conveners of the Central African Republic, Lebanon, as well as representatives from the Brazilian government, the Sun Movement, as well as the major group for children and youth. And we will conclude by a statement, closing remark by the Ambassador of South Africa, Chair of the CFS. So without much attending, I would like to invite you to first to watch a short video about the outcomes of the Food System Summit. Thank you.
Sustainable food systems can advance all 17 Sustainable Development Goals, and transformation is underway.
Welcome to Ethiopia, where the story of humanity began, the birthplace of coffee, a land of rich heritage and boundless potential. It is with great honor that we co-host the second UN Food System Summit in partnership with Italy.
Food is a right, a cultural expression, the pillar of a nation's identity and sovereignty. But it is also the first step towards being truly free, independent, and masters of our own destiny.
Governments are leading the way, integrating food systems into climate strategies, biodiversity frameworks, and national budgets. Empowering women and youth, scaling up nutritious school meals, and investing in agroecology. But governments cannot do it alone. The private sector must play a vital role, from innovation and logistics to finance and investments. The future of food is the future of humanity. Let us work together to build food systems that nourish every person, restore our planet, and grow prosperity from the ground up.
Thank you so much. I would like to go directly to the representative of Ethiopia and Italy, the two countries that hosted the Food System Summit, and I would like to take this opportunity to thank them for their leadership. I start with Ms. Alessandra Di Pippo, Head of Office Sustainable Growth Food Security at the Italian Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Alessandra, you have the floor.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for inviting Italy to join this event. I convey the greetings of Ambassador Gatti, who could not be present. Italy has been glad and delighted to co-organize the UN Food System Summit in Addis Ababa, together with Ethiopia. The Food System Summit was an important moment to take stock of progress on food systems transformation and to renew our collective commitment to this agenda. It allowed countries and partners to reflect on concrete achievements and the challenging that still remain. Holding the summit in Addis Ababa was particularly meaningful for Italy, as it placed Africa at the center of the discussion, not only as a region most affected by global food challenges, but also as a key driver of innovative and locally grounded solutions. For Italy, working with Ethiopia in this framework reflects the approach of the Mattei Plan for Africa, a partnership based on reciprocity, shared priorities, and mutual benefit, moving beyond traditional cooperation models toward joint action and co-ownership of results. The significant and high-level participation to the summit demonstrated the importance of the event. The summit reaffirmed the importance of maintaining a global platform for dialogue, coordination, and accountability on food transformation, connecting national pathways and international processes in a coherent way. Italy is continuing engaging in this effort through initiatives that provide sustainable agricultural value chain, local capacity building, and collaboration with both public and private sectors. These programs aim to generate long-term impact and ensure that food systems become more resilient and inclusive. The summit also allowed a fruitful and participatory discussion on the concept of food sovereignty, understood as the right and the capacity of every country to develop its own agri-food system and meet local needs while preserving traditional knowledge and community-based practices. This concept, introduced by Italy in the summit's agenda, was widely recognized as an innovative and valuable contribution in the global debate. We will continue this work in synergy with the upcoming global milestones, such as the COP30 and the World Social Summit, to ensure continuity and coherence across the different international agendas. Progress towards the goal established at the multilateral level depends not only on public policies, but on the joint efforts of government, young people, producers, and private sectors, researchers, and civil society as a whole. In particular, greater investments, both public and private, are needed. In this regard, I would like to take the opportunity to highlight that Italy welcomes the UN Secretary General's call to action from Rome to Addis and beyond, which provides the way ahead. A useful framework to sustain momentum and translate shared commitments into concrete and measurable progress. So I want to thank you very much, and I will be very interested to all your comments and your interventions. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ms. Alessandra. Thanks also for the commitment to continue on the follow-up on the outcomes of the summit, including the call to action of the Secretary General and highlighting the interlinkage between the global food system transformation process and what is happening at the national level. Now it's really my great pleasure to invite Dr. Mandeflo Nugezwa, Chief Executive Officer of the Agricultural Transformation Institute, to provide some opening remarks. And thanks again for your leadership and also for the hospitality to all the delegation during the Food System Summit. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Khalid. Honorable government officials, distinguished representatives, ladies and gentlemen, first and foremost, on behalf of the Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia, I extend a heartfelt and warm welcome to everyone joining this crucial side event at the Committee on the World Food Security as a UN foremost platform for inclusive policy dialogue on food security and nutrition. The CFSS precisely where this convention needs to happen. The UN Food System Summit +4 stock-taking moment, which Ethiopia is proud to co-host, was a crucial moment to check our progress towards the 2030 agenda. This historic event marked the first time summit was held in Africa, bringing global attention to the continent's pivotal role in the food system transformation. It reaffirms the political commitment to transformation while also delivering a clear-eyed assessment of the challenges that persist. For the many participants who witnessed our national commitment firsthand through the field visits in Addis Ababa, the message was clear. Transformation requires investment at a scale. It is to be recalled that the summit was concluded with a call to action by the UN Secretary General. The work of the CFS is vital as its policy recommendation provides a global blueprint for action. We are here at the 53rd plenary session because its call agenda directly mirrors the objective of the UNFSS+4, reviewing progresses, strengthening partnership, and unlocking necessary investment. As we reflect on the outcomes from Addis Ababa and the regional preparatory meetings, three core takeaways as especially relevant for our discussion here at the CFS. First, accountability. The summit delivered a strong call for strengthening accountability at all levels, national, regional, and global, to track progresses on the national pathways that many countries have established. This requires robust data, peer learning, and a commitment to transparency. Second, investment and finance. The discussions held in Addis Ababa underscored that we cannot achieve transformation without a paradigm shift in financing. We must mobilize smart, catalytic, and equitable investment from public, private, and philanthropic sources to reach the most vulnerable, particularly smallholders and youth, and to foster innovation for climate resilience. The third, inclusive and governance. The summit highlighted that transformation must be driven by the people it is meant to serve. The voice of the indigenous people, women, youth, and small-scale producers must be central to our governance mechanism. This is fundamentally aligned with the multi-stakeholder spirit of the CFS itself. Therefore, as we conduct these side events, we aim to reflect on the most actionable outcomes of the UNFSS+4 as well as regional preparatory meetings. Identify where CFS policy tools such as the urban and peri-urban food system policy recommendations or the framework for action for food security in protracted crisis can best support the implementation of national food system pathways and forge a stronger multi-stakeholder partnership between government, UN agencies, civil society, and the private sector to ensure the Secretary General call to action is realized. We have gathered an exceptional panel leaders and experts from multiple countries who will share their perspective on this critical reflection. With that context, let's move to the core of our session. I now hand over to our moderator, my brother, Dr. Khalid, who will guide us through what promises to be a very insightful and necessary discussion. Thank you, and back to you, Khalid.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mandefro, for Thank you so much, Dr. Mandefro. In fact, the summit in Addis had many firsts. First time in Africa, first time hosted by two countries, very good example of North-South collaboration. But also thanks again for bringing also the real needs of developing countries into the discussion. At the Food System Summit, you highlighted three main takeaways: accountability, investment, and the governance, which are at the core of the call to action of the Secretary General. I think this is a good introduction to the presentation by Dr. Stefanos Foutou, Director of the UN Food System Coordination Hub, on the key outcomes and reflection from the Food System Summit. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Khaled, and good afternoon to everybody. I would like first to start with a very big thank to the governments of Ethiopia and Italy for their leadership on convening and co-hosting the UNFSS+4 stocktake. And as many of you know, it was a very big bet that we took such an event outside of a headquarters of the UN, and what we can say that it was a full success. And after this event, everybody has acknowledged the leadership of Ethiopia on hosting this, and of course of Italy on supporting and on co-hosting. And I think they want to see more events that they're happening in Africa and in developing countries. So the stewardship of the two countries has reaffirmed the spirit of multilateral cooperation and inclusivity that has defined the food system transformation process since 2021. And many times when I talk about the UN food system process, I say that we need to go back to 2019 when the Secretary General announced his intention to host a UNFSS summit. So it's more or less now a 5 to 6 years process. So our event today is taking place at a time that we have multiple interlinked crises. We listen on Monday from the chief economist where we stand on food security and nutrition, and despite the marginal improvement we have seen in some numbers, we know that the challenges persist, the strategic challenges persist. I'm not going to repeat the numbers that you listen on Monday because I think it's a sad story, and I would like actually to shift a little bit gears and go and present my own, if you want, reflection on what we hear and what happened in Addis Ababa in the UNFSS+4. So there are a lot of messages that we took from this meeting, and my colleagues are working right now to produce the report of the UNFSS+4 that it will be available online. But I would like to highlight 5 big messages that they came to me as I was from one room to another and as I was following the preparations and the delivery of the summit. The one is that it's more important than ever that we need to unlock finance, especially concessional and blended finance, which is the most critical enabler. And when we talk about finance, we really need to start thinking out of the box. We know that with the current international development finance landscape, we need to identify new options. Domestic resource mobilization, private sector mobilization, both international and local. The second message is that the second message is that we see that there is a need to advance mutual accountability among state and non-state actors, spotlighting the role of the civil society, the indigenous people, women, youth, and the private sector on shaping agendas and actually supporting implementation of these agendas. The third is the imperative need to focus on micro, small, and family farmers, which are the backbone of production of big commodities. And in most of the cases, they receive the least from the total added value of a value chain of a commodity of a product. The fourth is that there's a big discussion now, and it was a plenary session in Addis Ababa on the item of food sovereignty. And it has come very clear across the board that food sovereignty will be something to define both the sustainability of the food systems, but also the food security, at least in developing countries, particularly in Africa. And it's important to say that in Africa, the idea of food sovereignty touches more the regional level than the national level. And it's very important to acknowledge that in the plenary for food sovereignty, we listen a lot of times that food sovereignty doesn't mean that we stop the trade, but maybe we need to focus more on inter-regional trade in Africa or in the regional trade in other regions. And I would say, of course, the final message is not a message, but it is the Secretary General's call to action, which is a mandate for action, not just momentum, and it has 6 specific areas that it's asking to focus our work for the next years. So the UN Food System Coordination Hub, as you know, we support countries and particularly the network of the food system national conveners, which I personally consider as the biggest asset that it came out of the UNFSS process and the UNFSS summit. And now we have more than 130, very soon, I think 140 countries with national pathways. And we do see already that countries have started integrating their food system pathways into their national development plans with different recipes, with different modalities, with different governance models. And it's very nice to see this diversity of the modalities that the governments use to make the agenda of the food system transformations part of the national development agenda. Later in this afternoon, we will have the opportunity to have a very nice session, I believe, with the chair of the CFS on how we can use the CFS policy tools on advancing this agenda. And something that I would like to leave as a message here is that there's a kind of anxiety sometimes in the space of the food system actors that each one is trying to compromise the space of the other. I think that there's space for everyone, and there's space for cooperation and collaboration. And I would say that even the ones that we are today and we're working on sustainable food system transformations, we are not enough. We need more, because the demand, and especially the demand from developing countries, from countries that have millions of people that they cannot have a plate of food in front of them, is very big. So from the hub, we have all the good will to sit together with different stakeholders and to sit together with other entities, particularly with the CFS, which is part of the UN family, and the UN family, it's actually supporting all this UN food system process, and to make clear that we will pick up the successful points of the transformation that is already underway. We will accelerate the pace, and we will try to scaling the work and to make sure that we go from national pathways to global delivery and achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals and the indicators. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Stefanos, for providing a historical perspective to food system transformation even before the summit, and also for highlighting the key action areas of the call to action of the Secretary General, which will be guiding not only the hub work, but the hub work and the UN work and the other stakeholders' support for food system transformation. With this, we conclude the introductory part. Now we go into a panel discussion, and we have 5 speakers, but before this, we start with a video message from the Chief Economist of FAO, Maximo Torero, who will provide an overview of the role and the results of the Food System Summit, especially from the Business Engagement Group perspective. Video's ready?
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Maximo Torero. I am the Chief Economist of FAO. We are living through a time of simultaneous shocks and challenges. Over the past few years, we have experienced COVID-19 pandemic, extreme weather events, war and conflicts, and economic downturns and slowdowns. Hunger remains unacceptably high, and inequality is growing almost in every part of the world. In 2024, according to the State of Food Security and Nutrition in the World, the SOFI report, 673 million people were suffering from hunger. If we don't accelerate our actions, it is predicted that 512 million people will be undernourished by 2030. Therefore, the transformation of our agri-food systems is not only an ambition, but an argument and an urgent imperative. We also know that we have violated 709 planetary boundaries. We also know that agri-food systems is affecting our biodiversity. And we also know that agri-food systems create externalities on the environment and also externalities on the health and socioeconomic externalities. As a result, the UN Food System Summit, the StockTech, the UNFSS+4, held in July 2025, reinforced this urgency of a transformation of our agri-food systems. It provided a space for open and in-depth dialogue around priority areas of interventions and successfully fostered a closer and more strategic collaboration. We witnessed a growing convergence among the governments, academia, private sector, financial institutions, development partners, and investors, with shared vision for transforming our agri-food systems to become more resilient and sustainable, able not only to feed, but to provide access to healthy diets for the future of generations. Our motto in this sense is good food for all, for today and tomorrow. UNF Food System +4 was a pivotal moment for galvanizing support for increased and targeted investments and advocated for evidence-based financing where it is needed the most. Dear colleagues, in the context of this summit, FAO, WBCSD, and the UN Global Compact co-chaired the Business Engagement Group with the support of the UN agencies, private sector, development banks, and IFIs. The group brought together 360 and more business executives at the summit, presented concrete investment cases, launched compendium of successful examples and viable co-investment models, and mobilized public-private partnerships to deliver on national pathways. The effort emphasized on private sector and investors as strategic partners in scaling innovation and technologies and unlocking investments on the ground. At the summit, FAO and GAIN, with the support of the UN Food Systems Coordination Hub, also launched the Agri-Food System Accelerator for our member countries to turn strategies into financing and scalable change. The accelerator aligns public and private resources, facilitates national planning, and connects strategic agri-food system plans to financing, including from development finance institutions and private sector. A diverse ecosystem of partners comprised of civil society, business, the UN systems, and the financial and international institutions should accompany countries in delivering the transformation and the development of new areas for investment. The accelerator focuses on closing the gap between strategy and financing. It promotes food security, access to healthy diets, climate-resilient agri-food system, and sustainability, the good food for all for today and tomorrow. It will offer a three-level analytical approach to support transformation. First, we will assess the current state of the agri-food systems. Then, working together with the governments and the resident coordinators and the UN institutions and all our partners, of course, with GAIN, we will conduct root causes analysis using qualitative and quantitative tools and design transformative actions with advanced modeling and impact assessments. It will advocate for continuous engagement with policymakers and investors, facilitating translation of data and information into policy decisions and investment plans. Ladies and gentlemen, we need mechanisms and initiatives to overcome fragmented actions and underinvestment. Coordinated international collaboration to reduce duplication, align priorities to de-risk investments, and build political consensus to unlock financing and accelerate transformation should be at the forefront of our work. The transformation of our agri-food systems demands new models of collaboration, grounded in data and evidence, shared values, trusted-based partnerships, and aligned incentives. That is why FAO has been committed to actively engage in the business engagement group and help set up the agri-food system accelerator. We are committed to continue these processes as follow-up of the summit to help identify opportunities to build partnerships across all stakeholders, ensure responsible investments around national priorities, and empower our member countries around nationally owned and nationally led agendas for better food for all for today and tomorrow. I hope you will have a great day today, and I really wish you the best in this workshop, side event, and we are here to improve and to move forward the transformation of the agri-food systems, working together with the accelerator. Thank you very much.
I would like to thank the Chief Economist of FAO for this important statement, highlighting the interlinkage between food systems and climate change, food system as an externality, and how to deal with this through a systemic approach. But more importantly, the statement focused also on something that we hear a lot from member states, financing, how financing can be mobilized in order to support national effort for food system transformation. And I have the pleasure to have two national conveners from two developing countries, Central African Republic and Lebanon, who will provide us with some answers on how they deal with food system transformation following the call to action. So I start with Madame Armelle Siupatis, the Director of Food Security and Nutrition, Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development in the Central African Republic. I would like to ask you how the Central African Republic is planning to implement the call to action, and also what kind of challenges you are facing, and what kind of tools, resources, a form of support that you will need from the hub, from the UN system in order to help you in addressing these challenges. Over to you, Madame Siupatis.
Je vous remercie, Monsieur le modérateur. J'en profite pour saluer la présidente du Comité de sécurité alimentaire mondiale et la remercier pour son leadership qui nous inspire tous. C'est ma deuxième fois de participer au Comité de sécurité alimentaire mondiale. Je salue aussi les autres panélistes et l'assistance. Alors, je remercie le pôle de coordination du système alimentaire de m'accorder cette opportunité de partager l'expérience de la République centrafricaine et par ce biais de m'exprimer sur des aspects qui touchent les autres pays africains. J'apprécie cette marque de confiance et d'encouragement que vous nous témoignez, qui nous donne de la visibilité et qui commence à porter des fruits. En effet, il y a eu un avant et un après Addis Abeba en ce qui concerne la collaboration des parties prenantes dans cette démarche de transformation de notre système alimentaire en République centrafricaine. La participation de la délégation de la République centrafricaine au sommet bilan d'Addis Abeba et les remontées d'informations positives qui s'en sont suivies ont redonné confiance et le moral à nos partenaires techniques et financiers et a facilité le mindset shift du nexus humanitaire développement-paix. Vous savez que le pays revient de loin. Nos partenaires sont plus attentifs, plus disposés à nous accompagner avec des engagements concrets. On observe un changement de narratif. Ils pensent plus développement, accompagnement, transfert de compétences, leadership au gouvernement. Je tiens à remercier spécialement la FAO et l'ONG WHH qui nous ont permis de participer à cette 53e session du Comité de sécurité alimentaire mondiale. On est venu en délégation avec le représentant du ministre de l'Agriculture qui se trouve au premier rang et le secrétaire général de l'Alliance des parlementaires pour la sécurité alimentaire et la nutrition. Ça nous permet de renforcer nos capacités et partager notre expérience pour contribuer à améliorer la sécurité alimentaire et nutritionnelle à l'horizon 2030. C'est dans ce contexte que je vais décliner les actions menées et les besoins en termes d'appui pour adresser les défis liés à la transformation de notre système alimentaire en lien avec les 5 pistes de recommandation de l'appel à l'action d'Addis Abeba. Le premier défi que je vais énumérer, c'est l'opérationnalisation de la coordination nationale multisectorielle et multipartite chargée du suivi de la mise en œuvre de la feuille de route nationale qui comporte 8 voies de transformation. En termes d'avancée, une ligne budgétaire de l'État est envisagée pour le financement. Les agences des Nations Unies se sont engagées des fonds pour appuyer le démarrage de la coordination nationale et ça dès notre retour du sommet d'Addis Abeba. En termes de besoins, pour cette coordination nationale, nous avons besoin d'un consultant pour nous aider à organiser le démarrage de cette coordination nationale. En rédigeant des termes de référence des groupes de travail, nous avons prévu 5 groupes de travail, dont un par exemple sur la convergence climatique et le genre, un autre par exemple sur la mise en œuvre des directives sur le droit à l'alimentation. Nous avons aussi besoin de la mise à contribution des bureaux pays des agences des Nations Unies dans les régions, dans l'arrière-pays, pour organiser les comités régionaux et préfectoraux. Et nous avons aussi besoin d'un dispositif robuste de suivi et évaluation. Le deuxième défi concerne le suivi et la lisibilité des financements existants. Nous avons transmis notre requête au bureau régional du FIDA pour que la République centrafricaine fasse partie du programme pilote pour l'utilisation de l'outil 3FS et nous attendons la réponse. C'est un outil d'aide à la décision qui va permettre de mieux utiliser les financements existants. Les fonds sont disponibles sur place, mais leur existence n'est pas toujours connue à cause du cloisonnement et à cause d'une faible coordination. Le défi 3 concerne la faible capacité des ministères sectoriels. Nous avons commencé une réforme institutionnelle. La Banque mondiale nous accompagne dans la création d'une agence nationale de sécurité alimentaire et nutritionnelle qui servira d'ancrage au plan de préparation aux crises à l'insécurité alimentaire et mettra en œuvre, entre autres, la stratégie nationale d'éducation nutritionnelle et coordonnera le système national de sécurité sanitaire des aliments. En termes de besoins, nous avons besoin d'un plan de réforme institutionnelle qui est indispensable pour permettre aux institutions de mettre en œuvre la feuille de route nationale de transformation du système alimentaire et le plan stratégique multisectoriel de sécurité alimentaire et de nutrition. La Banque mondiale a été sollicitée à cet effet car elle a l'expérience. Défi 4, faible capacité de la recherche agricole. Il existe bien sûr des initiatives, mais la relance du système semencier, par exemple, nécessite des approches innovantes et bien coordonnées, sensibles à la nutrition. Défi 5, faible modernisation de l'agriculture. Nous avons eu des avancées, mis en place un office national du matériel, mais en termes de besoins, la mise en place de la mécanisation doit être accompagnée pour élaborer une stratégie basée sur les spécificités des zones agroécologiques tenant compte des capacités humaines. Défi 6, faible capacité de transformation agroalimentaire. En termes de besoins, nous avons besoin d'appui technique et financier pour vulgariser les techniques de transformation artisanale et semi-industrielle innovantes sensibles à la nutrition. Défi 7, faiblesse des systèmes de collecte de données et du suivi et évaluation. Nous avons un projet régional de renforcement des statistiques financé par la Banque mondiale qui est en cours et nous sommes en train de relancer le système national de suivi de la sécurité alimentaire et nutritionnelle avec suivi des marchés et système d'alerte précoce. La Banque mondiale nous appuie, d'autres appuis sont nécessaires. Des échanges avec la division des statistiques de la FAO sont en cours pour intégrer l'indicateur FIAIS, qui sont parmi les indicateurs retenus pour mesurer l'atteinte des ODD, pour que la RCA figure dans Hunger Map. Les besoins, un dispositif robuste de suivi et évaluation est nécessaire. Défi 8, faible implication du secteur privé et du partenariat public-privé. Nous avons besoin de renforcer les capacités de notre secteur privé, de les sensibiliser sur la responsabilité sociétale des entreprises et faciliter le partenariat Sud-Sud. Défi 9, c'est attrait à la faible promotion des approches innovantes. Nous avons besoin de promouvoir l'économie sociale solidaire sur le modèle du Cameroun, de valoriser les aliments négligés et les produits forestiers non ligneux nutritifs, de promouvoir l'agroécologie, l'agriculture de conservation, l'agriculture générative et pour ne laisser personne de côté. Je vous remercie.
Thank you so much, Madame Almel, for very concretely summarizing the challenges that are facing the Central African Republic, but also highlighting the efforts that you have been doing in the last years. And I think I'm speaking on behalf of many of the colleagues who work with you from the Hub, that with your leadership, despite all the challenges that are facing the Central African Republic, you managed to put food system transformation at the center of the government work. Many concrete requests, but I see colleagues from IFAD here for the 3FS, and I'm sure this will be taken into consideration, but I would like also to announce that the Central African Republic will be the 5th country for the implementation of the Convergence Initiative in Africa. We are working closely with Madame Almel, and we will be implementing it very, very soon. Thank you so much again, and I would like now to go talk to Rami Zorek, who is a professor of ecosystem management at the American University, who will be speaking on behalf of the national convener of Lebanon, Dr. Inaya Azzedine. Over to you, Dr. Rami.
Thank you very much, dear Khaled. Thank you, and hello to everyone, Excellency. Thank you for giving us the floor today. As Khaled has said, I speak on the behalf of the national convener, Dr. Inaya Azzedine, who is a parliamentarian for the south of Lebanon and who is also the head of the parliamentarian SDG committee and the head of the parliamentarian committee on mothers and children. So her work brings together policy and practice. The talk that I am giving was different before I heard Madame Armel. I thank you very much, Madame Armel, and I second everything you have said. You could have actually taken everything you have spoken about as concerns for the Central African Republic and placed them on Lebanon, and they would be shared at least on 95% of the overlap. And I will therefore not go there again. Listeners, you can safely assume that the same problems are faced. I will, however, shorten my address and give it starting from a different perspective. Because Lebanon is still in the throes of a triple crisis, an economic crisis that started 5 years ago, and from which it does not seem able to extract itself. War crisis with the continuous Israeli aggressions on the south of Lebanon, in spite of a ceasefire since a year ago. So these are only unilateral, to one of the largest and one of the neediest regions of the country. And of course, also a political crisis that never stops to express itself in various ways and means. In the middle of those crises, of course, Lebanon presents both a challenge and an opportunity. A challenge because bringing the conversation towards food systems in this particular configuration is extremely difficult. You will grant me that. But an opportunity because more than ever, this is the time in which we should be talking about food system transformation. And that is indeed what we are talking about. I also wanted to add briefly that the climate issues are prominent, and although we tend sometimes to forget them, I would say that last year we got half the annual rainfall, and this year we're still way below the average precipitation for the current year. A second year of drought would literally mean misery in the Eastern Mediterranean. In the midst of all of that and of the reshaping of the food systems by war, displacement, and climate, and politics, and economics, the food systems are also being reshaped by solidarity, ingenuity, and care. So the Secretary General's call for action reminds us that transformation is not only a matter of policy, it is a matter of relations. And in the work of the convener, this ethic is translated into practice through what I'm going to call pathways of relational intelligence. We begin from the ground, from farmers, from internally displaced people, from students, from cooperatives who collect data on soil, water, and seed. And very recently, especially during this period after the war, when the pollution of the soil and water sources became an urgent and pressing concern, through citizen science, we have turned observation into ownership and transformed data from a tool of surveillance into a commons of resilience. I am not going to go through all the different tracks of the pathway, but I will tell you that we are taking agroecology extremely seriously in the midst of social and environmental reconstruction. More than ever today, agroecology presents an opportunity for forging intimate relationship between people, but also between people and land and between people and food. We affirm that food security and food sovereignty, that these two notions that have been talked about by previous speakers are not only achieved through the production segment of the food system or the agri-food system. They are also achieved downstreams and involve people both upstream and downstream. When this metabolism is broken, this relationship is broken, and it becomes extremely difficult to reduce the number of people who suffer from malnutrition in the midst of a system that is broken. Our job is to put this system back together again. We use agroecology as a tool of healing with the land. A land that has been devastated becomes, in its turn, a healer, becomes the promoter of the novel transformed food systems. These are powered by green energy, guided by local councils, and connected through low resources digital infrastructures. These we have put in place in 1 or 2 locations, and we will definitely, I did not come with a shopping list of needs, but I would say that all of the areas in which we have had successful work need to be scaled up. This scaling up cannot happen, we cannot do it on our own. We need actually support to do that, perhaps internal support, perhaps external support. This brings me to the issue that has been raised by my previous speaker, which is the relationship with the ministries. This relationship is difficult. There are a number of reasons for that. For one, ministers are, and by and large, political appointees. They don't always follow what has been done before. A minister of X ministry is going to try her best in order to advance and promote her area in the ministry. We absolutely need to establish a food system hub similar to the UN food system hub that brings together high-level representatives of the government. Now, there is a law that includes this. This law is the Right to Food law that has been completed a couple of years ago. by Dr. Inaya's team, and that is awaiting discussion and debate in the Lebanese parliament. We just need a little lull in security to be able to bring this to the table so that the right to food law will be passed in Lebanon, and Lebanon will become one of the countries where this is right to food becomes enshrined in the law of the country. I will wrap up by saying the following. The areas that need work are institutional and governance. So the interministerial coordination mechanism and the food systems coordination unit. The technical and the data infrastructure. Now we need to scale up what we've been doing. We have developed, along with the UNFSS+4, a tool for food system monitoring that is appropriate and adequate for the situation in the Eastern Mediterranean, in the Levant, and in particularly in Lebanon. We have used it for several countries of the region. It works well, although the data that it gives us is rather dim. However, this needs to be scaled up and become institutionalized. The capacities and the human resources, but I am talking specifically about technical capacities, reliable laboratories that are accessible to all in order to test food quality as well as environmental quality. This is something that is still lacking. And of course, we need to prioritize certain areas, South Lebanon being one of them. And unfortunately, and due to the war, these are the areas that drop out of the prioritization scheme of most donors. Ladies, gentlemen, colleagues, and friends, I bring this to you as our contribution, and I certainly hope this is useful and that this forms a good basis for further discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Rami. Dr. Inaya Zeddine is one of the few national conveners who is also a member of parliament and a medical doctor, and I think she brought a lot of energy into the food system discussion in Lebanon. Thanks a lot for highlighting also the challenges and needs, which are, as you mentioned, similar to many of the developing countries, and that the hub role as a coordination mechanism within the UN system it's important for us to understand these needs and also try to mobilize support for you and for other countries. Thank you so much. Now it's my great pleasure to invite Ms. Janine Joubert, who is Advisor Secretary for Food Security and Nutrition at the Ministry of Social Development and Assistance, Family and Fight Against Hunger in Brazil, who will tell us on the plans for the COP30 and how Brazil is implementing the call to action. We are working closely with Brazil in the last months, and in COP30, the hub will be also presenting several initiatives and several events that focus on the interlinkage between food system transformation and climate action. Over to you.
Thank you, Caleb. I'll speak in Spanish. Primeiro, buenas tardes. Recibam cordial saludo do Ministério de Desenvolvimento e Assistência Social, Família e Luta contra o Hambre. Desde a Secretaria Nacional de Seguridade Alimentar e Nutricional, nossa missão é planificar, implementar e coordenar políticas públicas que garantissem o acesso regular e permanente a uma alimentação adequada e saudável para todas as pessoas. Brasil saiu novamente do mapa de hambre, graças à coordenação de políticas públicas, la participação social ativa e a vontade política. Aún persistem desafios. É a transformação de los sistemas alimentários ante a crise climática, que impacta o acesso a alimentos saudáveis, sobretudo para os grupos mais vulneráveis. Por parte da Secretaria Nacional de Seguridade Alimentar e Nutricional, quisera compartilhar exemplos de como abordamos essa relação em nossas políticas públicas e que também iremos apresentar em el marco da agenda de ação e outras atividades em la COP30. Primeiro, a estratégia alimentar cidades. É uma convocatória a los municípios a trabalhar de uma forma coordenada com o apoio do Ministério de Desenvolvimento Social. Inclui agricultura urbana, periurbana, mercado de agricultores, cocinas solidárias e entornos escolares. A estratégia está sendo implementada em 102 municípios, cobrindo 77 milhões de pessoas em Brasil, e o próximo ano será ampliada a 1.000 municípios. Uma relação muito concreta com a agenda climática é que estamos ampliando para todos os municípios do estado de Rio Grande do Sul, onde no ano passado enfrentamos uma catástrofe climática sem precedentes. E a estratégia adotará um enfoque específico em la relação entre sistemas alimentares e câmbio climático. Destaco também o programa de cocinas solidárias, com mais de 500 entidades vinculadas ao Ministério, que garantizam alimentos saudáveis em contexto de vulnerabilidade social ou emergência climática e fortalecem as redes comunitárias e a comunidade solidária. O segundo exemplo é o programa Cisternas, que é um programa que promove acesso à água no semiárido brasileiro e na Amazônia, mediante a captação e o armazenamento de água de lluvia. Ha beneficiado mais de 1,3 milhões de famílias, fortalecendo a resiliência comunitária frente às secas e os fenômenos climáticos extremos. Este programa de cisternas encarna os princípios de justiça climática, soberania hídrica, garantizando o direito à água para o consumo e a produção de los alimentos. Terceiro, o marco de referência de sistemas alimentares e clima para as políticas públicas. Este é um documento de convergência e coerência das políticas brasileiras. É um instrumento técnico e político que foi elaborado de uma forma participativa com a sociedade, baseado em la evidência científica, entre diversos setores e níveis de governo. Hicimos o lançamento na semana passada, no Dia Mundial da Alimentação, pero também será lançado em la COP internacionalmente. Este marco fundamenta os princípios do direito humano, alimentação adequada, justiça climática, soberania alimentar e participação social e propõe duas grandes rutas. Primeiro, a governança democrática multinível para fortalecer a coordenação intersectorial e alinhar os compromissos nacionais sobre sistemas alimentares e clima. Segundo, a transição hacia sistemas alimentares saudáveis e sustentáveis, impulsionando a produção agroecológica, a agricultura familiar, a redução de perdas e desperdícios. Tanto o programa Cocinas Solidárias como Cisternas estão em el marco de referência e também em la canasta de políticas da Aliança Global contra a Hambre e a Pobreza. Trago aqui uma mensagem da Aliança. A Aliança Global está em posição de contribuir, graças a seu conjunto de políticas baseadas em evidências, para uma variedade de programas nacionais que incluem diferentes medidas de apoio a pequenos agricultores, programas de nutrição, programas de compras públicas, comedores comunitários, alimentação escolares e muitos outros. Podemos criar sinergias entre el centro de la UNFSS y el mecanismo de apoyo de la alianza. A solicitud de los países, el mecanismo de apoyo puede interactuar y facilitar la creación de asociaciones para intervenciones y programas de política específicos, incluidas em uma ruta nacional, mobilizando as capacidades e a disponibilidade de mais de 20 membros da aliança. Também é importante assinalar que o texto da Declaração de Belém sobre hambre, pobreza, ação climática centrada em las pessoas sigue aberto para o endosso dos países. De cara à COP30, Brasil está listo para trabalhar com os países na agenda de transformação dos sistemas alimentários, mais justos, saudáveis, inclusivos, resilientes, com políticas convergentes e coerentes. Aunque a agenda de sistemas alimentários aún ocupa um espaço marginal em las discussões climáticas, especialmente em las negociações. O marco da agenda de ação da COP30, que foi chamado por parte do embaixador Correia do Lago, Brasil, através da Secretaria Nacional, está liderando o plano de aceleração para a convergência e coerência de políticas públicas, respondendo ao objetivo de garantizar o acesso equitativo a uma alimentação e nutrição adequada para todas as pessoas. O plano se desenvolve barra el eje 3, transformação da agricultura e os sistemas alimentários, junto com o Ministério, junto com o Conselho Nacional de Seguridade Alimentar e Nutricional, na rede One Planet, FAO, WWF, UN Nutrition e outros sócios estratégicos. Agora estamos em um momento de elaboração, maturação deste plano. Em la COP30 teremos eventos estratégicos de angariar parceiros estratégicos, países e possíveis financiadores. O plano buscará mobilizar e sensibilizar os países em espaços internacionais e multilaterais, fortalecer capacidades de tomadores de decisão. Erradicar a hambre, transformando os sistemas alimentários, é uma decisão política e devemos tomá-la juntos. Graças.
Thank you so much, and I think many of us expect and have high expectation of Brazil in COP30 on keeping food system on top of the agenda, but also bringing what you highlighted very well, the social aspect of food systems. The hub is also participating in the social summit in Doha next month, and will be advocating for this strong interlinkage between food system transformation and social equity. Brazil was the first country in Latin America to implement the conversion initiative, and the hub will be supporting action track 8, 9, and 10 of the Brazilian presidency. So thank you so much again, and I would like now to go to Madame Joanne Raisin, who is the director of the Scaling Up Nutrition Movement, who will be speaking about how the Sun Movement is contributing to the implementation of the Secretary General Call to Action. Over to you.
Thank you. I'll try to be quick because I'm aware of the time. From the Sun Movement perspective, we see 3 clear entry points to support the call for action. So the 28 billion pledged at N4G, and of that 28 billion, almost half was focused on sustainable food systems and climate. Secondly, 39 of the Sun countries out of 67 Sun countries signed up to the Global Compact for Nutrition Integration, which aims to put nutrition at the center of development policies, and which is seen as really important for countries at a time of declining ODA. So this is a way that countries can really build effectiveness without having to access huge sums of money. And lastly is the Food Systems Summit Call to Action, which positioned food systems transformation with nutrition and healthy diets at its core as the cornerstone of the 2030 agenda. So as the Sun movement, we try to unpack this and what it means for the Sun countries to help develop the next phase, but deliver on the call for action. So we went out and spoke to 67 developing countries around their needs, how they plan to take forward action, and some of the challenges. And what was clear was that, firstly, the countries see nutrition integration as their highest priority. This is a means to have greater nutrition impact. Secondly, the way to achieve that is through food systems, and this is the highest priority area for some countries for nutrition integration. But there are real barriers to it that we need to work together to address. So, for example, while nutrition is effectively integrated into 89% of health systems, less than half of some countries have been able to effectively integrate food systems and also integrate nutrition into less than 17% of the climate policies. And one of the reasons and the barriers that remain is around evidence, how to build evidence of the co-benefits, and I'll use climate as an example of that because a lot of that relates to the food systems. You know, we've been quite complacent in the nutrition community in expecting nutrition evidence to be compelling, but actually what we need to be doing is building compelling evidence that action on nutrition and food systems leads to the action on climate goals. And so that's an area where we need to be working better. Secondly, nutrition integration with food systems is challenging because countries need more sustained technical support to help them achieve their goals. Around 90% said that they didn't really have the capacity to implement the full cycle of things that need to happen and demonstrate the results. And in the fragile states, that was more pronounced because fragile states don't even have the baseline data they need or the evidence needed to really develop their policies. And of course, the greatest challenge is financing, especially for the fragile states who've not been able to accommodate for the fall in odour by expanding the fiscal space. And while we were encouraged to see strong commitments coming in from the regional banks and financial institutions, for example, on nutrition-sensitive agriculture, we know that there's a real difficulty in achieving those targets because there's such a difference between the supply of financing and the demand at country level, because the ability to use that for impact requires a greater conversation involving more ministries and having more know-how on how to deliver on that. One of the things that came back was that 90% of some countries struggle to access the financing and build strong investment cases. So we're working as a movement, and that means all of the Sun partners, to tackle some of these. We see that as a major part of Sun 4.0. At the moment, we're working with others, trying to connect the different ministries of health, agriculture, and financing with new funding opportunities, and to be able to better share the country lessons and knowledge and practical examples that can really progress a nutrition-focused food systems approach. And we're hoping to be able to expand this as some with collaborations with new financing partners where we will help surface some of the demand problem and challenges and this should, in principle, guide financing opportunities. We're also working with a handful of countries now on addressing and identifying the barriers to accessing climate finance. So together with the ICANN initiative, for example, Sun is supporting 10 countries to integrate nutrition into their climate commitments. And we're also trying to mobilize support to Bangladesh and Madagascar to bring nutrition directly into their finance pipelines. But I'd just say at this point, that's the very minimum to be able to access climate money. It might take 2.5 years to put together a proposal, and it'll be another 7 years before that country sees that finance. How do we close that gap? I think as well that Sun has an important role to play in bringing focus to the fragile states and using its convening power to be able to bring in the focal points, conveners, the UN country teams, in the way that we've done so to develop the food system action plans together in Mali, Sudan, South Sudan, and Somalia. Lastly, I'd just say a plea for collaboration, because in this environment of limited resources, it's easy to become competitive, but collaboration is the key to success. And we want to be able to build a movement for its next phase that works with partners across the food system space, that works closely with the Food Systems Hub and countries to accelerate the progress. And I think I just end on a note that we also make a plea for greater flexibility, because what emerged from the discussions with the Sun countries is they are sat there with the nutrition coordinator, the Green Climate Fund coordinator, the Child Nutrition Fund, and all these different vertical funds that they don't have the capacity to engage with individually. How do we work together as a community to support a country's national plans and to be able to accelerate progress in that way? And just to say, I guess at country level, the countries didn't that much distinguish between nutrition, food security, agricultural growth, food systems, and food sovereignty. They were the kind of space that they work in, and we should be able to work in that space in partnership. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Juan. And I build on what you mentioned on plea for collaboration. I think this is from the Hub and from the Sun movement. We are working very, very well. We see common objectives, and we work through your focal points on the ground with the national conveners. I think we have a periodical coordination. Updating and integrating nutrition in national policies is something that is also supported by the Hub through the national pathways. I would like now to go to the last speaker in the panel discussion, Nicolas Domke-Venegas, who is a member of the major group for children and youth, will be speaking online on the role of youth in supporting the implementation of the call to action. Over to you, Nicolas.
Thank you, Caleb, for giving me the floor and inviting me to this panel, and hi to all there in the green room in Rome, but also joining virtually. Firstly, the Secretary General Call to Action call comes at the time of the implementation of the phase 2 of the Youth Strategy, Youth 2030, that, among other things, provide the United Nations system and member countries with principle of meaningful youth engagement, which we ask to be considered and adopted in development of the future projects. So our role is transcendental and vital in advancing implementation of the Secretary General Call to Action. Regarding to your second question, we all have in mind the result, which is a youth declaration. But to think about the process ahead, I would like to reflect on the process that brought us to this tangible result. The Hub, with the support of the World Food Forum, developed virtual regional consultations that were held through the first part of this year to gather regional priorities. Even though technology connects us across long distance, we are left with the feeling that we not connect with the local communities that are in real need. We connect with young people through their computers, iPhone and tablets, but at the same time, we leave aside those who do not access to the technology and internet. If the United Nations system wants to hear a voice, that youth voice that works on the fields, that sells in local markets, that works and eats in municipal dining halls, is must mobilize resources to consult them at local level. After these virtual regional consultations, a preparatory youth conference was held in Bangkok in the mid of May, bringing together more than 100 young leaders from over 50 countries. The meeting of young minds undoubtedly generate new ideas and proposals, which go beyond a youth decoration for sure. But once again, the feeling of dissatisfaction overwhelms us. If we focus on empowering leaders who are at the top of the pyramid, for example, speak 2 or more languages, have university degrees, and mostly enjoy good salaries, we leave behind those who need it most, those at the base of the pyramid, and those who can truly propose solutions because the problems beginning at the moment they get out of bed. The United Nations Major Group of Children and Youth, MBCY, representing diverse youth constituencies, including the SENA Youth Representative, has highlighted the recurring issues of late, selective, and tokenistic outreach. According to us, the youth voice are being sidelined through invitations that arrive late to the meaningful shaped agendas, consultations designed and led by the UN Food System Coordination Hub with individuals hand-picked rather than representative of youth constituencies, lack of transparency and clarity around how input is used, symbolic youth participations that do not translate into real decision-making power within this process. These concerns mirror the broader civil society critics voiced by the civil society and indigenous people mechanism of the CSF, echoing patterns first seen in the first summit in 2021. Weak accountability, opaque governance, and tilt towards institution and corporate interests. Here, we share our concerns and emphasize the need for youth-led, right-based engagement at the UN Food System Summit follow-up process. Our position is grounded in structured constituencies-based advocacy, where youth themselves shapes agenda and output. We believe that real youth participation means co-creation, not consultation theater, engaging youth constituencies from the start, transparency, clear selection process, decision timelines, and open draft. Accountability to traceable route from recommendations into intergovernmental or CSF process. Here, our proposal is clear. Stop focusing on individuals and put the focus and the resource on communities. If we do that, we will not be necessary for FAO to call for and select young leaders, because those names will be proposed by their organizations and their communities. Our experience demonstrates that where youth are given defined role, real ownership of output, and clear follow-up pathways, engagement can move beyond tokenism to genuine influence. We will not achieve the transformation we need if we bring together 100 leaders and mobilize 3,000 in virtual spaces. We will achieve transformation only if we manage to mobilize millions on the ground. To achieve this outcome, we must stop doing the same. The UN Food System Coordination Hub must stop doing the same. This is a call for the UN Food System Coordination Hub to the member countries and especially to donor countries. When you want to mobilize resources and develop projects focused on youth, come to the youth first. Thank you. Muchas gracias.
Thank you, Nicholas, for the very strong and constructive message. This will be taken into consideration. I will go directly to Her Excellency Ambassador Nusipu Jizili, who is the CFS chairperson and the Ambassador of South Africa, to give us the way forward and the closing remarks. Over to you.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I think following this rich engagement from the distinguished panelists, I have the privilege of trying to make some closing remarks. And of course, first by thanking all the speakers, people here in attendance in the room, and those that are online for their effective participation, your reflections, and also your presentations. The topic of this side event is one that deserves close attention, moving, of course, from ambition to action, as we have been called upon by the UN Secretary General. In this spirit, therefore, throughout this event, we've had fantastic references and reflections, both in terms of opportunities that lie ahead, but also in respect of not just from those that were involved in the organizing the UN Food Systems Summit, stock-taking moment, but also from those of you who have observed and also provided critical insights. And I would like to say that both from the country's perspectives, having had our colleague and a distinguished delegation of the Central African Republic, when Amel was summing up what she was saying, that it's important to have strong monitoring and as well as deepen private sector involvement for sustainable food systems, and to Brazil as also both a country but that hosted G20 and about to host the COP, climate change COP. We've had, again, a greater emphasis on social participation in food systems transformation. And of course, in this regard, linking the action agenda to cities and of course, urban food systems in the context of the various normative instruments, whether we would refer to the CFS nutrition policy programs and other related policies. We also heard from Lebanon, both in respect of citizen science, but also the emphasis on solidarity and care, which are outlining, or with that intervention, we had the role of agroecology in respect of people and land connection, a tool for healing society, and again, to advance the right to food. And I think that I've also captured in my understanding and reflections from the Sun movement. Joanne was highlighting both the call to action, both in the context of the Nutrition for Growth outcomes, the Global Compact for Nutrition, and the ambitious action program that was adopted in Paris, which is very much about food systems that advance nutrition, healthy diets. And I think these are aspects that from all the speakers that I listened to highlighted the importance of collaboration being key to success, to accelerate progress, and of course to advance the right to adequate food. I think there was also an interesting initiative where an example of ICANN initiative would be one of those elements of practical advancement of nutrition awareness across scales, and of course in the context also of informing food systems pathways in terms of connecting the programs both within the UN Food Systems Hub and of course the other a part of the UN family. And I wish to then conclude by saying that we are in full swing of the CFS 53 plenary week, and there are clear priorities for many stakeholders which exactly dovetail some of the reflections that I've had here today. And what we have discussed, we can turn all of us both from those policy ambitions, and this morning we're discussing both the urban, peri-urban continuum in terms of food systems, as well as beginning the process of policy formulation in terms of resilient food systems. So we can together, working together, the Committee on World Food Security, the Food Systems Hub, the rest of the UN family, we can turn the ambition and commitment made in these rooms by extending the hand and working with institutions, including the UN and the Sun Movement, as well as the various other private sector mechanisms that could help us to advance our commitment made in these rooms into meaningful change for the more than 638 million people who face hunger in 2026. With that, I am saying that I think what we have referred today on is that we need to both strengthen the multilateral processes, work together with other international initiatives in a manner that would be complementary, not duplicatory, but also enable innovation for transforming food systems towards those that are equitable, sustainable, and resilient in order that we can confront the challenges of today, but also challenges of the future. With that, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Chair, and congratulations for your chairmanship of the CFS, which conclude this week, but this was really a successful chairmanship. Thanks for putting a lot of emphasis on collaboration with the Hub, something that we appreciate. I would like to thank all the speakers. This was very rewarding. Please keep following the Hub website. We have several activities coming on, including the World Social Summit and COP30, where we continue to navigate this very challenging but rewarding journey of food system transformation. Thank you so much.